39 years old. My 3-year-old son was just diagnosed with autism. My marriage collapsed. I was renting an apartment in a town I really didn't feel at home in. I was on leave from my work and had to take a part-time job to make ends meet. But I saw it all as a second chance. Now, what made me believe this was going to turn into my best life ever? I'm Cris, and as the song says, don't stop believing. Today, believe. Right here on Live from the Wish House. So go grab your coffee, because here we go. Today, we're going to talk about incorporating believing, optimism, positivity, gratefulness into your life. We're going to talk about how I got to a point where having these ideals be the foundation of my mindset became not a difficult thing to do. But first, I want to say having a mindset of believing, optimism, positivity does not negate your own human emotions of disappointment or disillusionment or sadness or righteous anger. That's never going to go away. That's part of our human experience. It's part of who we are. I'm not looking to negate that. But I'm telling you, when you work a mindset program around optimism, positivity, gratefulness, it's going to make your life exponentially better. That's just a given. That's just going to happen. You're going to be able to attract the things into your life that you need or that you're sincerely wishing to create. And it's going to put those other emotions of disappointment and disillusionment and sadness in their proper place. You're not going to get stuck in that land as often as you used to. It's time to widen your spyglass and open your perspective up. So let me tell you how the journey began for me in a condensed amount of time. And again, I'm intending today you're going to hear something that you can connect with and incorporate into your own life. I'm going to begin again with my teaser. I was 39 years old. My 3-year-old son was just diagnosed with autism. My marriage collapsed. I was renting an apartment in a town I really didn't feel at home in. I was on leave from my work, but I took a part-time job to make ends meet. But I saw it all as a second chance to discover the person, to meet the person, if you will, that I knew was inside, but had eluded me my whole life. See, that was always my thing, living with an identity crisis. I never had an opportunity, as we used to say in the 70s, to find myself. I didn't have parents who provided that kind of opportunity. They didn't know how to provide that opportunity for self-discovery. I was raised in an Italian Roman Catholic home in the 60s by parents who were Great Depression kids and World War II survivors. So my parents had one idea about how life should be led. Well, my dad actually was a little more worldly, a little more open-minded, but I was a girl in that household in the 60s. So there you have it. But I had an odd imbalance, if you will, in my emotional quotient, in my psyche, my emotional psyche in my early years. So I'm going to tell you why. I was also the star of my family. Now, what do I mean by that? In the 1990s, there was a brilliant psychologist and a self-help guru, Dr. John Bradshaw. And he had an explanation of different roles we all played in our family and how that affected our inner child as we got older. And one of these labels was the star, who was basically the person in the family to who everyone looked for stability and perhaps some sort of saviorship. So I was definitely the star of the family. I was quite musically talented, very precocious, and I rose to a sort of local fame in my hometown for performing. It's what I was known for. It was all that I was known for. And I always felt like I was in some sort of cage trying to crawl my way out into developing my own self, but nobody seemed to be interested in who I actually was. They were way more interested in what I could actually do. And I'm going to revisit that more in depth in other conversations, but I needed a little touch of it today for an explanation. To say that I then found myself subconsciously or consciously, as an older child, developing a game plan for getting to a point where I would be in control of my own destiny. See, I think that my family, my parents, subconsciously or consciously, saw my talent, saw my outward performance as something that was on some level going to save our family, whether it was from a monetary lack or whether it was from not having a prominent place. Having that kind of responsibility at a young age is something that definitely controls your life if it's not worked with as you get older. So I made a plan how I would be in control of myself, how I would establish myself as a person, how I would be in control of my own destiny. And for a young girl growing up in the 60s and 70s, that plan attached itself heavily to marriage. So here's the game plan. Get married. This way I could shape my own world. I would be in my own house. I could chart my own course. Of course, I had absolutely no skill emotionally for any of that as I was growing. But that was my plan. That was my plan going forward. That was my plan. It was always my plan for saving myself, which is so interesting because now I know we can only save ourselves. No other person can do that for us. But I did have some other interests on the back burner as well. I loved my music, and I thought I wanted to have a successful music career or performing career at this stage of my life. I was getting so much validation, outward validation from that, friends, family, a community at large. And so who wouldn't want to feel that you were something because of that? So it was almost easy to trade in my own ideas, my own desires for that external validation. And as I grew up, I realized I loved performing, but I loved communicating. I loved educating. I loved entertaining. I didn't know how to mesh that together. Took me a long while to find out what I loved about all of that, and how I wanted to weave that into my own existence. But subconsciously, I was hyper-focused on getting the husband and getting to this life where I could create my own reality. It took me long in those days. Took me until I was 30 years old to find the guy. I mean, I had boyfriends and relationships, but none of them led to anything serious. But when I was 30, that plan became a reality. Now, oddly enough, I discovered in later years, I didn't feel 100% at ease, even when I was walking down the aisle. There was something about that whole thing that didn't feel aligned. And I think what it was is that the conscious Cris, the present Cris of 1988, didn't even realize that I had outgrown that plan. I had outgrown that strategy. I'd outgrown the dream. I had outgrown the mission. There were other plans and other dreams and other missions. There was way more to be discovered, but I was already in that one. And I was in that one for so long that I just kind of blindly followed through. But in retrospect, I see clearly now that even in the early years of my marriage, even as that relationship was evolving, I wasn't 100% comfortable. There was always a little bit of a gnawing sense of feeling out of control of my own self, of my own destiny. Now, to be fair, there were really good times and good memories during that marriage with family, with friends, with my husband. Very lovely moments. But I'm speaking about the whole inside Cris psyche experience itself. When I turned 37, I had my son. It was a crazy pregnancy. I was hospitalized for most of it. Anthony was born at 28 weeks, 2 pounds, 11 ounces. I can't even explain to you what kind of a stressful time this was. Anthony stayed in the hospital 6 weeks after he was born. So when he finally came home, there was joy. And I felt like that bump in the road was a life lesson. And now I was ready to begin this portion of my life, this chapterhood of my life. Chapterhood. I think I just made that up. Motherhood really has a way of changing you. And I truly felt the sense that a new chapter was beginning, and I was hoping that that was going to define me. But even in the joy of being a mom, something surrounding my whole existence didn't feel authentic. About 2.5 years later, Anthony started exhibiting characteristics of a developmental delay, which was eventually diagnosed as autism. And so the stress of that and the inconsistency of our life moving forward with any sense of normalcy was probably the straw that broke the camel's back on our marriage. Don't mean to condense it because it takes years for something like that to occur. But I think at that moment, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so when my husband left, I was 39 years old. My 3-year-old son was just diagnosed with autism. My marriage was collapsing. I was renting an apartment in a town I really didn't feel at home in. I was on leave from my work and had to take a part-time job to make ends meet. But I saw it all as a second chance. I felt very much like all these things, in particular, the introduction of autism in my life, was somehow saving my life. A total reconfiguration and redirection so that I could genuinely discover who I was and what my purpose was. I had kind of an internal epiphany. I had been given a second chance to work my way out of the plan that I had outgrown. This is probably not how you're supposed to feel when your marriage collapses and your life has come to the biggest bridge of all to cross. But that's why I trusted it, because as crazy as that was, as crazy as that feeling was, it felt authentic. The first thing that changed in me as a beginning of a new chapter, as the beginning of a redirection, as the beginning of a new Cris, first thing that changed in me was my traditional belief system, which had been rooted in Roman Catholicism. A lot of going to Mass and praying to external saints and believing that there was a God that was somehow moving my life around and answering prayers or not answering prayers. To me, at that point in my journey, it all felt top down. I needed to feel more of like a partnership. And I began to think that the belief system I had held onto was not my core belief anymore. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm bashing any traditional religions or anybody's thought processes and how they cope with things. I spent many years actively participating in my religion in a really deep, wonderful faith community. All good. No bad stories here. But this is simply my story about my evolution and my rearranging, if you will, toward a deeper connection to myself and to an external higher power. I haven't really turned off my foundation. I simply added to it in a more genuine way for me. I simply opened up the spyglass a little wider. In any case, I started feeling as if I had more power in this thing that we call life. I could create my own reality and I could create the life I wanted to live. And in that creation, I could partner with a higher power. And the feeling of relying on or working with a higher power in a horizontal fashion instead of a vertical top-down fashion felt so authentic to me. It made my shoulders go down. It made me relax a bit. It gave me a sense of comfort. It gave me a sense of wonder. And oddly enough, not too far after that, I found myself gaining some new knowledge from a typical early 90s source, Oprah. I was watching Oprah, and she had Rhonda Byrne on with her new book called The Secret. I remember watching that show and feeling as if somebody was speaking directly to me, because everything I was hearing was coinciding with original thoughts, well, at least I thought they were original, that I was having, that I somehow had attracted the second chance into my life, that I had somehow had attracted circumstances that would help me actually dive into working through my own personal identity crisis. That show and the book and the movie, The Secret, was oddly enough an affirmation in my life that I was on the right track. I was powerful in my own life, and the power came from an optimism of what was coming, a gratefulness for what I had, a finding of my bliss, of defining my joy, of connecting with my inner self, using meditation, discovering that there was still a force, a spirit, an entity that was working with me and not above me, which for me was almost blasphemous in the way that I was raised. I was raised to think that I was here and there was a God there, and that there wasn't any equality or any meshing of this, and that I had to wait to see what was going to happen and accept it rather than create it, rather than feel protected, comforted, less stressed. And as I began feeling less stressed, I felt more comforted when I felt like I was working with somebody else that was guiding me. And it didn't happen overnight. I worked at this every single day. I worked at everything is happening for my higher good. I worked at I am developing my higher self. I worked at hold the vision, trust the process. I worked at everything I see and feel and discover is happening for a reason. I worked at that every single day. I practiced it every single day. And even though The Secret movie and the book had little kitschy moments to it, it did help me. The visuals helped me to work on the little small, mundane, ordinary exercises, attracting small things into my life, putting that belief system into my mind that inspired work and opportunity was being created by me and through me with that partnership that was helping me to maneuver. It was like a GPS. But that was my springboard. That was my springboard into diving more into this kind of thinking. And the gratefulness was such a huge part of it, to be grateful for everything that I had to be grateful for. I learned to love who I am and what I bring to the table. And I had a lot on that table. I was working full time. I was raising an autistic child, but I dove into that with a love-filled fervor. When I look back on those days, everything seemed aligned. And memories of that time and what I was able to create feel solidly amazing. I have so many friends that say, you had such a hard struggle. You had so many obstacles in your way. And if I'm writing them down and if I'm talking about them and if I'm attempting to inspire while I'm talking about them, I have to say, yes, there were a lot of bridges to cross. Yes, there were a lot of lessons to be learned, but I don't look back and see it as a huge struggle or something that was negative. And I'm telling you, I don't see it that way because I worked this program of feeling the gratefulness, of feeling the optimism, of feeling that I wasn't alone in that journey, but feeling my own power in it, feeling that I could, as they say, create a life I would love. So I find myself today, about 25 years into working this kind of mindset, working and reworking this Chrislosophy. I'm continually developing my own program of balance between my internal power, what I can control, what I can hold, how to hold it, when to trust, how to trust, and when to let it go. And it all hinges on one thing: believe. I believe. I believe it's for my highest good. I believe that whatever it is, it's all going to work out in the way that it's supposed to. That grows from the optimism, the gratefulness, the positive mindset, and a true sense of knowing me and my higher power. We're a team. I save myself. No one else can do that for me. So how do you get there? Well, I'm going to tell you two things that worked for me. I love to say it. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, but here's my tips. Go watch the movie The Secret. Don't take everything as gospel truth. It may get you thinking in a positive way. It's not a magic trick, but it can't hurt to widen your lens. It might convince you that the law of attraction is a physical, natural occurrence. It's not a magic trick. You're attracting every day. So you might as well find out a few ideas for attracting what you want. Gives you a little kickstart to realize that you're the active, viable creator of your life. It's a little bit of a different mindset, a little bit of a turn, a little twist and turn in your mindset. And it takes a while to develop, but it's a really good vibe. Number 2, I advise getting to know yourself better and giving yourself permission to be you, no matter what age you're at. Learn to ask yourself when you're feeling the fear, when you're feeling the uneasiness, when you're feeling the not positiveness, when you're feeling the pessimism, when you're talking yourself out of things, when you've lost your sense of gratefulness, ask yourself why. And where is that coming from? You might find it's coming from other outside forces. So it could be parents, and it could be parents from your childhood. It could be from your past. It could be parents, teachers, social media, which is a whole other topic. Could be news, or it can be coming from something a little bit deeper inside. Personal disappointment that you haven't dealt with. Disillusionment that you haven't dealt with. Unfulfillment that you're afraid to deal with. What you have to remember is that everything can change. We can change our mindset. We can change our outlook. We can change what we're not happy about in our life in an instant. For me, tapping the surface, diving into where all of those kind of fears and a not pleasant mindset was coming from, tapping into that helped me feel like more of a powerful creator. It helped me feel that maybe there were things in my mindset that it was time to let go of. What did I have in my mental school bag that wasn't ringing true or speaking to me anymore? It's okay to let ideas go that you've outgrown and find what leads you to a more authentic version of yourself. Letting go and giving myself permission to let go led me to be a more genuine Cris, a more genuine person, a more authentic human being. And it's a great sense of validation you give to yourself. It's joy-filled. It's a learning to love yourself. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. You'll feel more worthy of good things. It'll give you strength. It actually lifts you physically. It lifts your body. It lifts your face. It lifts your eyes. You don't feel yourself in that kind of downward, unworthy position when you can really look inward and truly understand what it means to accept who you are. Give yourself the pat on the back. Things come into your life to move you, to redirect you, to save you. It happened for me because I recognized it and I accepted it and I worked with it and I came out way the better for it. There's a line in the movie Titanic where the older Kate Winslet is talking about her days with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Dawson. And she said, "He saved me in every way a person could be saved." And what she meant by that was that she recognized in him, she accepted what he was offering her, a wider life. If you remember the movie, she shows the pictures at the end of all the things she accomplished from the ideas that he had handed her. She had to accept it. She had to recognize it. She had to work with it and become the better for it. And for me, I feel that line applies to my son, Anthony. And believe it or not, the autism. Because it was through that autism that my path was revealed. And rather than, of course, there was mourning and fear and all sorts of disillusionment in the beginning. It was short-lived because I was determined to recognize it, to accept it, to work with it. And I came out the better for it. See, that was the process. The autism was the process. It was the bridge. And it was that obstacle and my embracing of that obstacle that saved me. Everything happens for a reason. Dive a little deeper. Don't take things on face value. Believe. widen the lens, and simply believe. I'm going to see you next time, live from the Wish House